So, as I said, our focus is on leading executives, and there's something really profound that happens when you start thinking about people who lead organizations, and you really start thinking about how can we help them. And so one of the ways in which we help people is through educating them, but also one of the ways that we help senior leaders navigate success of their companies is to help them understand environments in which they operate. And to do that, we have set up many, many years ago something called the World Competitiveness Center, where we are looking at a variety of countries and to understand how competitive these countries are. And our definition of competitive country is one which basically helps organizations and companies in that country to be successful. And so we've been running these rankings for a very, very long time. And then we rank a variety of different countries on a number of criteria. So here you're seeing 3 different criteria. You're seeing digital, you see talent, and the World Competitiveness Ranking. The World Competitiveness Ranking tells you how competitive your economy is as a whole. Digital obviously tells you about digital, and talent tells you about talent, right? So it's a little bit of a more detailed understanding of what's going on. And here you see all the countries listed together, and it's very, very convenient if you're trying to find Korea. Korea is here. I'll give you the numbers in just one second, but I just wanted to share with you a little bit more of a background here on these rankings. You see anything that is in yellow, these are sort of high rankings, so you can see countries like Denmark over here, or Singapore, or the Netherlands that are exceeding in rankings. And then you see countries like Korea that have a little bit of yellow around digital, and then also have a little bit of blue, which is where some of the work needs to be done. So this is what we're going to talk about for the next hour, really thinking about where Korea excels, and Korea has been really, really successful. And we're also going to talk about places where Korea needs to do a little bit of work. And it turns out that a lot of this work will be on people who are senior leaders in the organization. So it really helps you understand why we're doing this, because again, by looking at competitiveness of countries, we're really trying to reach out to leaders to say, hey, this is the kind of work you need to do if you want to be successful on a global scale. So let's look at Korea. Let's start very directly with you guys. So the first thing we're going to look at is the World Competitiveness Ranking, the World Competitiveness Ranking for 2023, which has already come out. We released them over the year, so you'll see the second ranking for 2023 is not ready, so I'll show you 2022. But fortunately, they don't change much over years. If they do change, they change only by a small number. So what you're seeing for 2022 can help you understand where Korea is likely going to be in 2023. Korea is number 28 out of 64, so it's a very respectable place, right? So you could say somewhere in the middle of the pack, right? So not quite to the top, and we'll dig into this, and we'll ask some questions around why is Korea number 28, and why some countries like Denmark, Ireland, Switzerland, Singapore, and the Netherlands are top of the World Competitiveness Ranking. I would say every time I'm finding myself in the middle of any distribution, I always first congratulate myself, and then I always then say, let's get to work, right? So this is going to be a little bit of that. Then what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the world competitiveness on digital. Here, the ranking is going to be from 2022. But as I said, highly predictive of what it's likely to be in 2023. And then what we're going to look at is, wow, number 8. Guys, this is a huge achievement. It's really, really hard to be in the top 10 of this list. Remember, you're competing with 60 other, it's like Olympics, right? You're competing with the best of the best, right? So to come number 8 is very, very, very impressive. And you number 2 is USA, right? So imagine saying, we're more digital than the USA, particularly with the recent developments in AI. And last but not least, we're going to look at talent. And for talent, we're going to start asking questions around what's going on, because here we're actually not seeing a particularly good position. We are seeing, you guys being in number 38. And so this will put together an interesting story, one where on average the country is very, very respectable position. When it comes to digital, the country excels, and yet when it comes to talent, clearly there's a lot of work to be done. And since a lot of these talent activities are inside of organizations, one of the big things we're going to do is we're going to ask senior leaders in organizations to say, please invest in talent, please work with talent, because otherwise it's going to be extremely difficult for you to take advantage of the amazing digital situation in Korea. And in fact, we're going to take it even further. We're going to say, look, if you're really interested in pushing the competitiveness of the country as a whole, you have an amazing base in digital. In order to activate that base, in order to really take full advantage of all the investments you're making in digital, you're going to have to work on talent, right? So you won't be able to move the bottom part, you won't be able to move the bottom ranking here without moving the top ranking here, but you do have a good base, okay? So let's deeply into this. I'm gonna walk you through all of these individually. So we're gonna start with the overarching competitiveness ranking and really dig much more deeply into this. Then we'll go to the other rankings. So what does the ranking actually capture? It captures your ability to create value as an organization inside of a particular country. And one important thing about this ranking that very few people actually realize is that it is not IMD's assessment. We actually don't assess you. What we actually do is we go to your leaders in Korea, in every single country. When we do this for Japan, we go to leaders in Japan, and we ask executives in every country about what do you think about your own country, right? So we survey people in Korea, we survey senior leaders in Korea to ask them what they think about competitiveness. We do the same thing in Japan, we do the same thing in China, we do the same thing in Singapore, etc., etc. We also use hardcore data. And so we then use the combination of hardcore data that the country produces with what the executives in that country say in order to report back to you. So this is in some ways a subjective assessment, but it's not our assessment. It's us helping you to see how you see yourselves. And so we, as I said, compare 64 economies in that way. And even though I gave you the overarching number, of course, this overarching number comes out of a variety of different factors. And we're going to look at 4 different factors. And those factors are economic performance, which is kind of, if you like, the macroeconomic environment. And here countries like Ireland, USA, Singapore, United Arab Emirates, and Qatar are at the sort of core top 5 of this ranking. Then we're going to look at government efficiency. How good is the government? And we're going to look at a bunch of factors here. We're going to look at the extent to which the governments have good taxation policies, but also we're also going to look at just how well they run. There are some governments that run better than others. Switzerland, Hong Kong, Ireland, Qatar, and Denmark are deemed to be the top 5 economies when it comes to government efficiency. Then we're going to look at business efficiency. Again, here we're going to look at how efficient and effective the companies are. And then again, we're going to look at a variety of different factors. And here, Denmark, Netherlands, Ireland, Taiwan, and Belgium are at the forefront. And last but not least, we're going to look at infrastructure, health, roads, telecoms, basic education, more advanced education, all these sorts of things that are extremely important to companies creating value. So as you can see, we take a very, very broad view of what it takes to create value. We are looking at the government infrastructure, but we're also looking at what actually companies do and how well companies are set up. And underneath every single one of those factors, those 4 factors, there's more factors. So this is one of those, kind of Russian doll things where you kind of put factors on top of each other to aggregate things up. We're not going to go into the details of these sub-factors. We're going to keep our conversation at the level of the four factors, because I think that's sort of where some of the key messages are really visible. But if you're interested, for every country, you can go to our website, you can download detailed information. So if there's anything here that is of great interest to you, feel free to download this yourself. And as I said, we're taking about 256 different criteria, so this is a very, very big study. And again, we do this for all of the 64 countries, so you can imagine a lot of work goes into this to really give you the rating. Okay, so I think it's useful to start again looking at who are some of the key winners. You've already seen some of them, but maybe if you look at the map and then you can look at the list, you see that there are some interesting patterns about who the winners are. It's a little bit easier to be top of the ranking here if you're small. Right? Running smaller countries is a little bit easier than running bigger countries, right? The only exception to this, of course, is United States, which is number 9 in our ranking, and then Canada, which is number 15 in our ranking, both really, really, really big countries. United States also happens to be still the largest economy in the world, so perhaps if you're the largest economy in the world, it is a little bit easier to become highly ranked here, but everybody else here is a small country. A lot of them are European countries, but there are still quite a few countries here in Asia that are doing very well. So with number 4, we have Singapore, number 6, we have Taiwan, and number 7, we have Hong Kong that are highly, highly ranked. Korea, as I said, is number 28 in the competitiveness ranking. And I think in order to really understand what sits under this ranking, we really need to start going a little bit more deeply into the sub-rankings that I told you, right? Which is the economic performance, government efficiency, business efficiency, and infrastructure. Because you're seeing some really, really interesting patterns in the data when you start opening up the data here, right? So what you're seeing is that underneath this ranking, there are 2 rankings that are very high and 2 rankings that are a little bit on the lower side. So on the high side, what we see is infrastructure and economic performance, right? So these are number 14 in economic performance, which has actually increased a little bit from 2022, from 22nd place to 14th place, and infrastructure did stay the same, right? So those are places where, again, Korea is doing phenomenally well, but then government efficiency and business efficiency are on the low side without much change, right? You can even look at it a little bit more deeply over time and start thinking, okay, how does it really work over time? Where are we over time? So I invite you to spend just a few minutes looking at this diagram, and I'm sure that you're beginning to see a little bit of a pattern here. Right, so the overall efficiency was going up. The overall rating, which is indicated in red, and competitiveness going up. So Korea went from 28 to 23 to 23 down to 27, and now back to 28. Right. So there's a little bit of a good start, and then we're back to where we started. Right. And so what's going on? What's going on is there are 2 very, very distinct trends. So you're beginning to see 2 different things happening here. One, when it comes to infrastructure, we're going up, right? We're going up from 20th place. There's a sort of steady march to 16th place. Look at the other one, economic performance. That's also going up very nicely, right? So those, both economic performance and infrastructure is something that's really helping your ratings, right? Your rankings. But underneath that, what's pulling you down is the green line and the blue line, right? And the green line is business efficiency, and the blue line is government efficiency, right? So that is actually always a very worrying sign, because in some ways what we're seeing is that the economic performance and infrastructure are usually what we call lagging indicators. And the government efficiency and company efficiency or business efficiency are what we call leading indicators. And so what do we mean by that? Leading indicators are things that are predicting what's going to happen in the future. And the reason for that is, of course, your economic performance, your ability to invest in infrastructure is a result of how efficient your businesses are and how efficient your government is, right? So in some ways, these two things that are going up are things that you've done really well in the past and now you have good effects. These things, when they're going down, they're usually going to tell you what's going to happen, right? If your government is not efficient, if your companies are not efficient, there's not a lot of profit, there's not a lot of money, and then your economy performance goes down, your infrastructure goes down, and so we have to start worrying about this. Fortunately, you're still in a good place, but at the same time, we do have to start really, really thinking very actively, what do we do to reverse this trend? And so one of the ways to also understand this is to start thinking about how correlated these two things are. And again, government efficiency and business efficiency go hand in hand. And again, the more efficient the business, the more profitable it is, the more taxation there is, the more you can make your government more efficient, right? Or the other way around, if your government is more efficient, that really gives your business the ability to become better and more efficient, you get more profit, you get economic benefits, right? So those two things, even though we're talking about them separately, always have to be thought about together in the sense that you can't fix one without the other. And it's also interesting to sort of locate your place here in this diagram where you're located, right? And so this is, your business efficiency, this is your government efficiency, and start asking questions like, who's similar to us, right? So one of the ways to do this is to sort of say, look, we are around here when it comes to business efficiency. You scroll down and you get to Japan. So what it tells you is you're in a better place as compared to Japan when it comes to the business efficiency, right? But your government is as efficient as the Japanese government. So you do have, like a nice, interesting comparison versus Japan here. But then you can also go up and say, look, there's a bunch of other places such as New Zealand or Malaysia or United Kingdom, Germany, whose businesses are as effective as yours, and yet their government is stronger. And so that also tells you a little bit about their ability to drive competitiveness. Having a stronger government, even if your business is not so strong, is probably going to help you out. But what you really should be thinking about is, how do you move up? How do you move up to the top right? Right? And notice there are some very interesting countries in this top right which you necessarily wouldn't expect. For example, Thailand. What is Thailand doing here? Interesting, right? Very interesting that nobody really expected Thailand to be there in terms of their ranking of business efficiency and government efficiency, right? There's a couple of other interesting places there. Like Czech Republic. What is Czech Republic doing there? Can we start learning from places like Thailand and Czech Republic in terms of our efficiency of government and the state? And I have actually a unique privilege of living in Thailand for the last 5 years as a Dean for Asia. And I can tell you, by looking at organizations in Thailand, not so much the government, because I don't interact much with the government, but when it comes to looking at companies and how quickly the companies are transforming and how much companies in Thailand are investing in digital transformation, in training their leaders, in making themselves more effective, you're really beginning to understand how you can actually reach a level like this, even though Thailand, let's face it, is in terms of this overarching GDP and GDP per capita, it's obviously smaller than places like Korea, right? So you can start thinking about, maybe there's an interesting set of companies and interesting countries here that you can start looking at and learning from in order to lift yourself up. Otherwise, you're sort of just in this area here where you begin to compare yourself to Japan or Germany, which might not be the best place to look at. So let's dig a little bit more deeply, because I think you're beginning to get a sense again that so much of what we need to work on here in Korea really has to do with taking our infrastructure here and taking the amazing economic performance, but really working on government efficiency and business efficiency. And I don't know if you can see it because the screen is rather small, so I'm going to read some things for you, but I'm also going to show you some of these components more. But let's look at what are some of the worst ranked criteria when it comes to business efficiency. In other words, what are some of the key factors that are really driving you down? So let's start from the bottom here. International experience, workforce productivity, credibility of managers, competent senior managers, corporate debt, women in management, and worker motivation. Remember, these numbers are out of 64, right? So if your number is 50 out of 64, that means we have a lot of work to do, right? So those, and remember, this is not IMD coming to Korea and saying, we think Korean management is in trouble. These are Korean leaders who are telling us we're in trouble, right? Because I would feel absolutely terrible standing here. I would actually not stand here ever to tell you there is an issue with Korean management. I think it would be extremely inappropriate for me to say that because who am I to judge? But for me to tell you that your own leaders are telling us we have an issue with productivity, we have an issue with credibility, we have an issue with international experience of our leaders, I think I'm okay, and I hope you forgive me for saying this and allow me to continue to speak, but I think it's an incredibly powerful message that your own leaders are sending to yourselves, right? Because again, remember, these are the people that we're asking, These are the people that we're asking, and they are telling us we have a problem, right? And this is dragging us down, right? Also, on the government efficiency, we have issues like tax evasion, legal and regulatory framework, bureaucracy, government subsidies, tariffs, redundancy costs. All of these things are obviously big issues, right? Again, these are executive leaders telling us we're finding it really hard to work with the government, right? It's really hard for us to accelerate our growth because of these government regulations, right? And by the way, it's not like we're saying the government is giving us a lot of regulations and we're fantastic. They're not saying that. They're saying we're having our own internal problem, but also the governmental stage is not helping us out. So I think it gives you a very, very amazing insight. And in some ways, the story is so straightforward, and the story it's almost too clear on what to do. So, and you know, it's a lot of work, but I think you guys are in a very, very clear kind of signal from yourselves to where you should be going. And it's a little bit hard to read because the screen is small, so that's why we're going to share the slides with you so you can have access to this without any problems. One other place to look at this is to, again, maybe look at some comparisons, right? I always kind of think that you always have to look at some comparisons here. So here we compared you to UK, Japan, France, Bahrain, and New Zealand. Don't ask me why we're comparing you to Bahrain, because this is my colleagues who work on this have a special algorithm to compare the most similar economies. But I think UK, Japan, and France, at least, and New Zealand is the sort of easiest ones to understand why you would compare economy like Korea to these countries. And again, what's really fascinating is to see is you know how you stack up against these countries, right? And again, for example, when you start looking at business, so this is on the government legislation side, right? Notice all of the countries that you're being compared to that are kind of considered to be closest to your economy, very high, 53, right? Really, really big difference when it comes to business legislation, right? Same when you move to business efficiency. Notice all of these countries here, Korea on finance. All of these countries here, Korea here on productivity. All of these countries here, and then you have questions about labor market. So again, I think even when you sort of look in abstract terms, you get a clear message, but also when you compare yourself to comparable countries, the message begins to be exactly the same. These are some of the details that I put in the presentation. I'm not going to walk them through. These are sort of details for when you get the presentation, so you can kind of dig a little bit more deeply into this. But I do want to just point out two things from these slides, right? There is a couple of things from the previous slide that I want to show you, right? One of the things that comes really clear from this slide is scientific infrastructure. Number 2 in the world, right? Number 2 in the world, which is, again, one of the things that we always have to think about when we present these slides or we think about these things is, what do I have that's amazing? What is it that I can build on? And where do I need to work on, right? And I think one of the things that comes out loud and clear from the slide is your number 2 rating in the world for scientific infrastructure. And this is represented in the amount of R&D that gets spent, and how many people are involved in R&D development, Nobel Prizes, patent applications, patent grants, and all these sorts of things. I mean, Korea is a country of extremely high number of really smart people who are getting a lot of money for development, right? And then again, the second you move to start thinking about productivity, you get rank 41. And you then ask yourself a question, how is that possible? What's going on here? On one hand, we're investing so much of our money into R&D, we're investing so much money into being smart, and then our productivity is 41st in the world. And so there's a big disconnect here, right? And the big disconnect between investing a lot of money in R&D and not benefiting from this on productivity side is management, and it's leadership. It's kind of how you manage your businesses. Right? If you're working very long hours, or the your productivity per hour goes down, right? Which is very often the case in Korea, right? If you have relatively old-fashioned management methods, you can have the best R&D in the world, but unfortunately that will not translate into productivity. So again, I'm pointing this out because there's a huge opportunity, huge investments, but we just need to take advantage of them. And again, business legislation is also not helping us out. Rank 53, right? Again, it's so much easier to operate in environments like United States or maybe in Switzerland, right? Where massive amounts of innovation and very, very good business legislation allows you to take these amazing developments and turn them into new companies and turn them into new developments. Right? But that requires really, really solid but flexible legislation. If you don't have that, you're basically wasting all the potential, right? So I'm sort of standing here and kind of like begging you guys, like, guys, you're sitting to me, you're sitting on a pot of gold, maybe even 15 pots of gold, right? All you need to do is just reform how you take advantage of this, both inside of companies, so your productivity goes up, and outside. So, and you will become 10 times richer, and you become much more successful as an economy. So I think all the components are here, but you need to just take advantage of this. So the questions for you are basically, okay, since R&D is a source of success for us, how do we continue on our R&D front, particularly with the advent of AI? AI will mess up people's R&D efforts. So in other words, my first question is, what do you do as leaders not to lose everything that you have? But most importantly, the question then becomes, how do you transform work? And then notice I put everything here in terms of I, because I really want to put it on you. I really want you to make this very personal for you, to start thinking about how you take advantage of the R&D, but also what role can you play in how you work, how you manage, how you lead, particularly in the service sector, because actually that's where we're seeing the biggest issues with productivity in Korea, not so much in manufacturing, but in the service sector. And also, what can you do to transform the public sector and the legal structure to take advantage of these things, right? Because again, the opportunities are amazing. I think it's just where we derail here is in the execution part.